Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic today that I think touches every part of our lives, really.
Yeah.
It's that fascinating sort of dance between what we do as individuals and how we function as a group.
You mean the interplay between individual effort and collective action?
Exactly. You sent some research on this, and just glancing at it, there are so many angles, from pandemics to, believe it or not, how sports teams work best.
And everything in between, right?
Right. One article even argued that sometimes, that whole think for yourself idea can actually hold us back from achieving something really big.
That's so interesting that sometimes it can be a roadblock.
Yeah. It's like, are we supposed to stand out or blend in? When does it matter most? I'm super curious to unpack all of this.
Me too. It's a paradox for sure, because we're always hearing about individual achievement, being self-reliant, all that. But then so many things we value in society, they depend on people working together really well.
Exactly. So maybe to start, could we look at a real-world example where this tension between the individual and the group is really obvious?
Well, the pandemic, right. That's a prime example if ever there was one. Think about the early days, all the unknowns and everyone's scared.
Oh, for sure. Everyone just trying to stay safe, but what did that even mean? So many different opinions flying around.
Right. And you have people making choices based on, I don't know, their own idea of the risk, maybe, even going against what, the health experts were saying.
And some of those choices, like what one person did, it actually affected a lot of other people, didn't it?
Totally. Like, say someone goes to a huge gathering when they're maybe not supposed to. That could spread the virus, put others in danger.
It's a huge reminder that, yeah, we value freedom, but what we do is tied together, even when we don't realize it. So how do we make sense of this? How do we balance what individuals want and what the whole group needs, especially when they seem to clash?
That's where it gets really fascinating. The research you shared, it digs into some psychology stuff, societal factors, all sorts of things.
Okay, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
So one article, it talks about these things called cognitive biases. Basically, it's like mental shortcuts our brains use to process info fast, but sometimes they lead us in the wrong direction.
Okay, got it. But how does that relate to individual versus group action?
So picture this. You got to make a choice, right? It could help everyone, but you got to give up a little something yourself. Our brains, they tend to focus on that little cost to US, like right now, and we downplay the good stuff that could happen for everyone later on.
So we're kind of hardwired to be a little selfish, even if it doesn't make sense in the long run?
Kind of, yeah, but it's not like we're all bad, It's more that our brains evolved to survive when things were scarce.
Makes sense. Back in the day, looking out for number one was probably smart to, stay alive.
Right. But nowadays, we're all connected. Our actions can have a much wider impact. And that instinct to just think about ourselves, it can backfire. Big time.
So we got to figure out how to, override that wiring, start thinking more collectively.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of, and I quote here, teaching ourselves common logic comes in. Recognizing those biases, those mental shortcuts, and then choosing to do things that benefit both us and the group.
This is blowing my mind a little bit, gotta be honest. It's kind of daunting, too. How do we even begin to shift our thinking that much?
Well, the research points to education as a big factor, but not just learning facts. It's about critical thinking, being able to see things from more than one angle.
And not just memorizing, but learning how to think in a way that considers the bigger picture.
You got it. And this type of thinking, it can be nurtured in so many ways. Schools, obviously, but also community stuff, even the media we consume, it all plays a role.
This makes me think about how often we see, in movies or whatever, success is shown as this solo thing. One person against the odds achieving their dream.
Yeah, that's everywhere, that narrative. And look, individual effort is important, but
Yeah.
it often ignores, the teamwork, the support systems, all the people who contribute behind the scenes.
Right. Even the so-called self-made successes, there's a whole network involved, right?
100%. Any success story, business, invention, social movement, you name it. It's never just one person acting alone. There's a collective effort there, even if we don't always see it.
So then, how do we change the story we're telling? How do we show that power of the collective in a way that really clicks with people?
I think highlighting real-world examples where it's worked, where collective effort made a difference, is a good place to start.
Okay, I like that. Hit me with an example.
Take vaccines. Developing them, that's amazing science, no doubt. But it also took researchers working together, manufacturers, healthcare people, and even regular folks who chased to get vaccinated.
And that's a perfect example, right? individual actions adding up to something that benefits everybody.
Yeah, and it shows how important trust is, cooperation too. For a vaccine to really work, people have got to trust the science and be willing to do their part, to protect themselves and the others.
Which takes us back to that teaching ourselves common logic idea. It's about realizing our choices have a ripple effect and being willing to put the group first sometimes.
And that can mean questioning what we believe, challenging our own biases, maybe confronting some uncomfortable truths, or looking at things from a totally different viewpoint.
So knowledge isn't enough, right? You need self-awareness and what's the word, like intellectual humility.
Exactly. Got to be open to the fact that we don't know everything. In our own view, it's just one piece of the puzzle, not the whole thing.
This makes me think about groupthink. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Where people just want to fit in so bad they don't speak up, even when they should.
Oh yeah, good point. That's the opposite of what we're talking about here. For a group to be truly smart, you need different perspectives, people willing to rock the boat a little.
So how do you create that kind of environment? Especially now, when it feels like everyone's in their own bubble, just hearing what they already agree with?
That's the million-dollar question, and the research actually digs into this. One article, it was talking about building bridges between people who disagree, ideologically, I mean.
Okay, but how? Seriously, it feels like things are so polarized, everyone's dug in on their own side.
It's tough, for sure. But one thing we can do is focus on the stuff we do agree on, the values, the goals, instead of the disagreements.
So common ground instead of what divides us.
Right. Like even people who are totally opposite politically, they might both want clean air and water, good schools for their kids, a fair legal system, that kind of thing.
Finding those things that connect us as humans, no matter what we believe or where we come from.
And once you've got that connection, it's easier to talk to each other, actually work together towards those shared goals.
This is making me think about the power of stories, how they can bridge divides, help us understand each other better.
Oh, absolutely. Sharing personal stories, it's way more powerful than just facts and figures, right? It lets you connect on a human level.
Like that saying, people forget what you said, but remember how you made them feel. Stories get to us emotionally, make us feel that shared humanity.
And that shared humanity, that's the foundation for any kind of collective action. When we realize we're all in this together, we're more likely to cooperate, help each other out, work for the common good.
This makes me think about leadership and how important that is for collective effort.
Oh, huge E. Leaders, they set the tone, create the culture, whether it's a company, a community, any group, really.
It's more than just bossing people around, right?
Yeah.
It's inspiring people, creating an environment where collaboration thrives.
Yeah, and that takes certain qualities. A good leader, they listen, they communicate clearly, and they empower others to use their strengths to bring their own ideas to the table.
It's about making people feel like they belong, like their voice matters.
Exactly. When people feel valued, respected, they're way more likely to be invested in the group's success and work hard to achieve those shared goals.
Okay, this is all making sense, but I'm still stuck on how we get over those biases, the ones that make us put ourselves first. It's complicated, right? No easy answers.
You're right, there's no quick fix, but the research does offer some clues about how to nudge ourselves towards thinking more collectively.
Okay, I'm listening.
One article talked about framing, how the way we present information can actually change how people see it and what decisions they make.
So like how you describe a problem changes how people respond to it.
Exactly. Say you've got a public health campaign, right? If you only talk about personal responsibility, get vaccinated to protect yourself, you're missing out on a more powerful message.
It would be.
Appealing to that desire to help others, to contribute to the greater good, get vaccinated to protect your community. That kind of framing can have a much bigger impact.
Tapping into people's altruism, their desire to be part of something bigger.
Right. And this framing thing, it works for all sorts of issues. Climate change, economic stuff, social justice movements, you name it.
So it's not just about changing minds, it's about how you communicate in a way that resonates with people's values.
And to do that well, you got to know your audience, their culture, the specific issue you're dealing with. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Finding the right words, the right framing, to connect with people on an emotional level and get them to act.
And that brings us to another powerful tool. Narratives, stories.
We were talking about that earlier. I'm a big believer in the power of stories.
And there's a lot of research to back that up, Studies show stories are way better than just stats or logic when it comes to engaging people, motivating them.
Because stories get past our defenses. the rational stuff. They speak to our emotions.
Exactly. And when we hear stories about people coming together, overcoming obstacles, achieving amazing things, or making the world better, it's inspiring, right?
It reminds us we're not alone, that we can make a difference, and that working together actually works even when things seem impossible.
And it's not always about heroes and grand gestures. Sometimes the most powerful stories are about everyday people doing small things, but things that matter to their community.
Those acts of kindness, compassion, cooperation, the stuff that builds a strong society.
Exactly. Those stories show us that collective action isn't some fantasy, it's something we can all do every day in so many ways.
So, finding those chances to contribute, to be part of something bigger, to make a positive impact on the world around us.
And celebrating those efforts, sharing those stories, inspiring others to do the same.
This whole conversation has been eye-opening. I'm seeing this individual versus collective thing in a whole new light.
It's a dynamic that's always there, shaping everything. And the more we understand it, the better we can handle the challenges and the opportunities that come our way.
And one thing that's really clear now, it's not an either situation. We don't have to choose between individual freedom and responsibility to the group.
Right. It's about finding the right balance where both can flourish.
Which takes, questioning what we believe, talking to each other respectfully, working towards goals we share.
It's about realizing we're all connected, and what we do, it affects everyone else, for better or worse.
So, practically speaking, what can we do to bring more of that collective thinking, that collective action, into our own lives?
Great question, and that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface,
It's true. That's what makes this topic so fascinating. There's always more to uncover.
So for our listeners who are like, okay, I get it, but what do I do? What are some concrete steps we can take to, live more of that collective mindset?
Well, one thing, it sounds simple, but it's powerful. Pay attention to the words you use.
Okay, how so?
Instead of always talking about me and my needs, try using we and our more often.
Consciously reminding ourselves that we're part of something bigger and that our choices affect others.
Exactly. Just that small shift in language can start to change how we see things subtly.
It's like we're reframing our own internal story to be more inclusive, more community-focused.
Right. And that change in how we think can lead to actual changes in how we ACT.
Besides our language, what else can we do?
Look for ways to collaborate, to be part of something that goes beyond just you. Volunteering, a community garden, even just being a more engaged citizen. There are so many ways to do this.
Finding those things where our individual efforts contribute to a shared goal.
Yep. And don't think small actions don't matter. They add up, they create real change.
This makes me think about social capital, those relationships, those connections that make a community strong.
That's a great point. The more we interact with our communities, the stronger those bonds become, and the better we can face challenges together.
It's like weaving a stronger social fabric, one connection, one act of kindness at a time.
And speaking of connections, don't be afraid to reach out to people who disagree with you.
I know we talked about bridging those divides, but it can feel kind of scary, to be honest.
It can be, sure, but it's also incredibly rewarding. When we get out of our echo chambers, talk to people who see things differently, it opens up whole new perspectives.
Maybe even find some common ground we didn't know was there.
Exactly. And that common ground, that's where the real magic happens. That's where collective action takes off.
This deep dive has been amazing. I'm looking at this whole individual versus collective thing in a whole new way.
It's a dynamic that's always at work, shaping our world. And the more we understand it, the better equipped we are,
Yeah, totally. And one of the biggest takeaways for me, it's not about choosing one or the other. It's not individual freedom or collective responsibility.
Right. It's about finding that balance where both can thrive.
And that takes being willing to question ourselves, talk to each other respectfully, and work together towards goals we all believe in.
It's about understanding that we're all connected, and what we each do, it makes a difference in big ways and small.
So to wrap this up, any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
Think about the legacy you want to leave behind. Do you want to be remembered as someone who only cared about themselves, or as someone who made their community, their world, a better place?
Wow, that's powerful. I think that's the perfect way to end this. We all have a role to play, and our choices matter.
So go out there, make your contribution, whatever that looks like for you. Even small acts of kindness, compassion, working together, it all makes a difference. It ripples outwards.
And until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep trying to make a positive impact on the world.
This is DigitView.